Two of college football's biggest powerhouses in Michigan and USC have teamed up to torpedo a $2.4 billion deal that could reshape the Big Ten forever. Is this the start of a conference meltdown or just cautious, smart decision making? Is Michigan no longer committed to the Big Ten and starting to develop an exit strategy? And is USC still in the good graces of the conference after throwing their weight around not even 2 years into joining the conference? It all starts with the Big Ten's proposed $2.4 billion capital investment deal, which has been dominating the headlines this week. This week, the conference's presidents and athletic directors wrapped up their scheduled call, their meeting, whatever you want to call it. And while no vote was taken or final decision announced, it's clear that the pushback from Michigan and USC is either keeping things in limbo or they stopped it altogether. It was ESPN and the Sports Business Journal that said that right now this deal is being held. It's in a holding pattern, which leads us to believe that USC and Michigan most likely either gave everyone something to think about or they don't want to move on without everyone's support. So with dissent from the key schools like these two kind of throwing a wrench into everything that was supposed to be, or Tony Petitti hoped to be, was going to be a straightforward decision, I think we need to look at the facts as we know them, draw from recent reports and some historical context, so that way we can deduce if Michigan and USC plan to be in the Big Ten in future years or not. We also need to clarify that this isn't a private equity deal, despite how some are framing it. Honestly, and I don't mean to be rude here, but I'm just being honest with you, if you hear anyone call this a private equity deal at this point, just disregard their opinion and what they have to say immediately, as they're either being dishonest or just plain ignorant on the matter. This is not a private equity deal. If you read anything about it, you know this. If you know what private equity is, you know this isn't a private equity deal. So if you like real information and not fake news or lying to you, hit that like button, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating or review on podcast. You see, my goal isn't to give you bad info that keeps you anxious and lie to you to make you keep coming back for more info. I want to give you the real story and clearly label what is opinion and what is fact. We can do that by reviewing the $2.4 billion UC investment deal, as it is pivotal to know about this if we're going to talk about whether Michigan plans to leave the Big Ten or not, and what USC's future looks like in the Big Ten as well. It's important to understand the basics before diving into the opposition. So let's start with how the Big Ten has been exploring private equity for over a year. That is true. They have been exploring that. Even though this deal is not private equity, they've been exploring that. And so have the Big 12 and the SEC. Heck, the ACC and the North Carolina are currently investigating Saudi Arabian money. Pablo Torre broke that just this week. Big media likes to kind of leave those parts of the other conferences out because they just don't like the Big Ten. Not everyone, but most people just don't like the Big Ten. However, recently the Big Ten has begun working with UC Investments, trying to make a deal, and this is an investment arm of the University of Cal's pension system, not a private equity group. The idea is to bring in about $2.4 billion in upfront capital distributed to the 18 member schools, averaging about 135 to $140 million each, though a few like Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State would get a bit more of the upfront cash, not necessarily every time, but of the upfront cash of $190 million, based on factors like brand value, how long they've been in the conference, and revenue generation as well. This cash could help cover immediate pressures such as a $20 to $22 million per school athlete revenue sharing from the recent NCAA settlement, or if you got big expenses like a coaching buyout. We saw that play out with Penn State's $50 million payout to James Franklin, which they may not have to pay. Good for them if they don't have to. But if they do, this money would be very helpful. In return, the conference would extend its grant of rights agreement through 2046, which essentially binds the schools together for media rights and sponsorships, preventing any easy exits. It's about 2036 right now, so it's just kind of 10 years on after that. They are not selling their media rights to anyone. they are keeping them with the Big Ten. This is a key difference to what the ACC did, as they locked theirs up with ESPN with no way of earning money. It also involves creating Big Ten Enterprises, a new subsidiary to manage commercial aspects like TV deals, national sponsorships, and potential things like jersey patches and on-field naming rights. Listen, I don't like those as much as you do, okay? So don't come at me saying, "Oh, JR likes the on-field stuff and the jersey." I don't. I'm just giving you the information here, okay? Now, a crucial point here is that this is structured as a capital investment, not private equity. That means UC Investments gets an annual share of conference distributions for 20 years, and then they have an option to sell after 15 years. But they don't gain ongoing ownership of the Big Ten or the Big Ten Enterprises, board seatings, or control over decisions. It's more like a long-term loan than selling a piece of the pie. And that's why it's seen as better than just a true private equity model that the SEC and the Big 12 are considering, where investors could have a permanent stake. It's also why it's different from a payday loan where you have to go back and pay for the loan. They just continue to make the money with you. The scary part of this is that an investment like this is coming to the Big Ten. But if the Big Ten doesn't do it, let me rephrase that, okay? The scary part about this, all right, is that if the Big Ten doesn't do this, right, the SEC and the Big 12, they're considering options of more money as well, where investors could get a permanent stake. The scary part of this is that an investment like this is coming to the Big Ten. But if the Big Ten doesn't do it, it could go to the SEC. It could go to the Big 12. And the Big Ten might be forced to sell to private equity instead of receiving a capital investment, because you may not get another deal like this. I mean, could the Big Ten even go to the Saudi Arabian money route, right? I don't think they go to Saudi Arabia like North Carolina has, but who knows? I didn't think that they would be expecting to get an investment of this magnitude either. So you just never really know. So to simplify it, a capital investment is better because you are selling a small stake of the company, not selling the whole thing for ownership like you would with private equity. Reports emphasize this distinction, and the Big Ten has put out a statement emphasizing this as well. However, Michigan in particular, and some of their region, well, I shouldn't say Michigan, some of Michigan's regents and board members in particular keep referring to this in terms of private equity. I'm not sure why they keep doing that. It seems like it might be a way to kind of create some anxiety and rally opposition against it, perhaps to underscore some risks or to build leverage, though the exact motivation isn't clear. That's just kind of my thoughts. You might be asking, why does the Big Ten need to do this? You know, the Big Ten has so much money. It's the richest conference. It's the wealthiest conference. They're making the most money right now. They have plenty of money. And while that is true, they have plenty of money for basketball and football. They right now don't have enough money for Olympic sports and women's sports. And the big kicker on why they need more money is that the race for money never ends. You can't remain complacent in this business and also continue to have all the Olympic sports, all the women's sports, everything that you've had before. So while I agree, I think all of this haggling for more money is stupid, and I don't like it either. The Big Ten doesn't need any more money, but if the Big Ten doesn't do it, the SEC will. If the Big Ten doesn't do it, they'll have to make cuts. If the Big Ten doesn't do it, the Big 12 will. Saying the Big Ten shouldn't get more money is like saying your NFL team doesn't need more draft picks, right? How are you going to get more talent? How are you going to compete against other teams who get good young talent? The truth is that if you sleep on making money, the opposition will make more money than you, and that will be bad for your conference and bad for your school. Just look at what's happening to the ACC right now, where they didn't continue to make money year over year and increase their deals. It's just a lot bigger than just their grant of rights. Some might say, well, what about the endowments, right? The schools have billion-dollar endowments. And yes, schools do have a lot of money in their endowments, but schools also make a lot of money with their large endowments. Those endowments make them money for how large they are. So spending the endowment doesn't just lower what they save, it lowers their earnings as well. But that's for a different video. I don't need to go into all of, what endowments are and how you make money off of them. This video is about how Michigan and USC are unhappy with the deal. They met at the USC versus Michigan game last weekend in the Coliseum, and by Thursday, Michigan's Board of Regents meeting made it official. They were solidified in their stance against the proposal, against the investment, with regents like Jordan Acker calling it a payday loan. Talked about that. Don't really see it that way, but that's what he wants to call it. That trades away future revenues for quick cash and other savings. He said enough is enough when it comes to these kind of financial maneuverings. USC's 40-member board of trustees shares similar views, and reports indicate near unanimous opposition there too, including from some athletic administrators as well. Their concerns are not exactly the same as Michigan's. Their concerns boil down to a few key areas. First, uneven distribution of upfront funds. This is a one-time payment, but it's unclear if it impacts future revenue as well, and if there's going to be an establishment of those three schools over everyone else. USC wants to be in that establishment. USC believes they would fall behind Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State in a tiered payout because of that first payout, which feels unfair for programs with such a storied history. There's also an incentive structured tied to performance in football, basketball, and marketing, modeled after the ACC system, but that introduces uncertainty they don't want. Second, the 10-year grant of rights extension is a major sticking point. We'll go over this a little bit later on. Both schools argue it's too committing at a time when college sports are evolving so rapidly. Super League ideas are floating around. Media rights could consolidate across conferences for bigger pots, and they want flexibility to adapt without being locked in until 2046. Trustees at both places have expressed that the deal doesn't truly solve underlying issues like escalating costs in athletics, seeing it more as a short-term bandage. Basically saying, let's look at how we manage our money instead of trying to get more money. And again, Michigan's repeated labeling of this as private equity, using terms like a payday loan, seems to be designed, this is again my opinion, seems to be designed to amplify fear, even though it's not, right? This is not a payday loan. This is not private equity. Perhaps it's to scare people into thinking it's riskier than it actually is, or to push for better terms. I'm not necessarily for the deal. I'm just for making sure everybody has the correct information on what the deal is. This resistance is creating a divide in the Big Ten, and not just with those on the top versus those at the bottom, but those at the very top of the conference. Arguably the two biggest players in the conference, maybe you could argue the top four. Right now, it looks like it's Michigan versus Ohio State. And if you want to include USC, you could say Michigan and USC versus Ohio State and Penn State. There's a sense of division where schools are starting to question each other's commitments for the first time in a while. The deal requires unanimous approval from all 18 members to proceed under its current terms. And with over 200 pages of detailed governance documents distributed last weekend, Thursday's call was meant to move things along. Instead, it ended without a vote, and reports say a decision is delayed at best. The other 16 schools appear largely supportive, right? Michigan, Penn State kind of leading the way. They're viewing it as a way to inject cash during tough financial times. But it's not just the cash infusion. Now it will set up the Big Ten enterprises for better national monetization in the future. And I'm being told that's what what Ohio State is loving most about this is the Big Ten enterprises and what that can do not only for them, but for the rest of the conference. Ohio State seems to truly believe that as they grow higher, others will grow with them. But the standoff doesn't seem to be a little spat. It could lead to a divorce where Michigan and USC won't extend the grant of rights, and they are signaling they're not fully committed beyond 2036. To be clear, no one has said this publicly. It's just kind of the vibe people are getting. But if you read behind the scenes, it's clear that these two large brands are not satisfied with hitching their wagon to some of the schools in the conference right now, whether that be because of smaller brand, market sizes, whatever it is, it seems to be that way. Perception can become reality in these situations. In schools like Northwestern, which is investing nearly $1 billion in a new stadium with no debt, and actually brings far more money into this conference than people realize, or Minnesota and Wisconsin, which backed the recent expansion, are left wondering about long-term stability. There's even talk among supporters of proceeding without the two holdouts, and I think that would be the most dangerous of losing those two in the conference, perhaps renegotiating terms for a 16-school version rather than the full 18, though that would likely reduce the deal's overall value without such iconic brands and programs in USC and Michigan. If this was, two of the lower brand schools, I think you possibly could do that, but not without these two. These are two of the biggest, and not just the Big Ten, but in all of college football and all of the nation. Lobbying efforts from schools like Ohio State since Tuesday haven't swayed them, which only deepens the wedge. To understand this better, it's helpful to look at some historical context from the Big Ten, because this isn't the first time tension has arisen over conference decisions. Take the formation of the Big Ten Men's Hockey Conference back in the day. It was a total battle. Greg Flugerson from Peek Around the Corner was talking about this on his podcast. He does some good work over there. I'd recommend going and listening to him. And if you want more of this stuff, I do some of it, but not as often as he does. Minnesota didn't want the Big Ten Conference at first for hockey, as they were making good money in their league playing rivals like Denver and North Dakota. But Ohio State and Michigan applied pressure by highlighting how much they contributed to the conference through football, which dwarfed the value of hockey. Minnesota eventually agreed, and the league formed, with 6 teams later expanding. There were even talks about adding North Dakota as an affiliate, pushed by Minnesota for the rivalry in hockey, which is not unheard of. You have John Hopkins and Notre Dame are affiliates as well, but Michigan vetoed it hard. They only want Big Ten institutions, preferably large AAU research universities. The selectivity has been Michigan's hallmark in the conference for some time, and they've always prioritized expanding with schools that match their profile, like rejecting non-AAU candidates. It's why if Florida State or Clemson ever come knocking to the Big Ten, Michigan, we don't know for sure, but they would likely be, wouldn't be a vote yes for them. They would be a vote no. They want partners that bring academic and research value, in addition to the football value, the sports value, the athletic value, not just athletic prowess. This history shows Michigan's commitment to a certain vision of the Big Ten, but it also highlights how they're often the ones drawing lines on who belongs and who doesn't. That selectivity ties into why Michigan might be framing this as private equity and resisting so strongly. We're unsure of the full reasoning, but it's likely tied to wanting a future conference that only includes schools bringing real value to the conference and not just including them because they've been in it for a long time. The Board of Regents hasn't stated it directly, but in my opinion, the opposition could be the start of broader thinking about a leaner Big Ten, potentially without certain members who don't contribute as much in terms of revenue, academics, or market reach as well. So is Michigan wanting to leave the Big Ten, right? That's the big question. I don't think so. Some categorize this division with Michigan as being uncommitted to the Big Ten. I don't think that could be further from the truth, if we're being honest here. They are just as committed to the Big Ten as Ohio State. It just looks a little different right now. It's not that Michigan doesn't want to commit to the Big Ten. It's that Michigan doesn't want to commit everyone currently in the Big Ten, or doesn't want to commit to everyone currently in the Big Ten Conference for the long haul, right? It's like wanting to be committed as a fan to a school, but maybe not the head coach, maybe not the entire staff. You love the school, you love being a fan, but that doesn't necessarily mean you love every coach that's on the staff. It's not that they want to leave the conference, just like how fans don't want to leave being a fan of a school, but rather to keep options open for reconfiguration around the 2036 mark or later, maybe even when they do the TV deal in 2029, 2030. How do we know this? Well, because Ross Dellinger reported that Michigan doesn't want the grant of rights extended. That Michigan has the Big Ten has incredible flexibility right now. They are the wealthiest conference with the most potential because of their flexibility. The SEC, Big 12, and of course the ACC do not have that. And not just flexibility to expand, but flexibility to reduce as well. Michigan not wanting the grant of rights to be extended most likely means not more conference expansion. While that is possible, there could be more conference expansion. It could mean that we are entering into a phase of conference contraction or conference recategorizing with a, say, Big Ten A, Big Ten B type of side there. Essentially, instead of the conference bringing in new schools, the conference could either kick out schools that are not as valuable as they once were, or have the most valuable schools play the most valuable schools more consistently. I think that is what the UC investments deal would give us, and it's one of the reasons why again, my opinion, why I believe Ohio State is on board with this deal. But why would anyone why would they want schools to be kicked out though? Why would schools not one? Why would schools be kicked out in this scenario though? Listen, I hate to even bring it up. I hate to bring them up as examples because it's going to look like I'm calling them out. And I'm not trying to call them out, but it makes sense and it's a good example. So, Maryland Rutgers fans don't get mad at me. But the Big Ten brought in Maryland and Rutgers for television markets, which was the primary driver for the Big Ten expansion in those days to include them, as it gave the conference a valuable presence in the large and lucrative New York and Washington, D.C. metropolitan areas. This expansion was part of a larger strategy to boost revenue, strengthen the conference's brand, and ensure long-term financial stability by accessing new audiences for media rights deals and other revenue streams. But what if in 2036 media markets don't offer as much in the conference as they did 10 years ago, right? What if the conference starts to look how they make the conference money by being competitive in the Big Ten? How big is your brand for national audience, right? Does that play a factor? What if digital streaming takes off so much that's no longer about media markets and how and what those mean, far less than media partners do, right? What schools, what brands do the media partners want to go with rather than the media markets? If in the future media markets are not as valuable as they were 10 years ago due to digital streaming, it is possible that member schools might not want to have Maryland and Rutgers or teams like them in the conference anymore. Honestly, we just don't know if that's going to happen. That was just an example. I'm not saying that's going to happen. And schools in the Big Ten don't know either. But like it or not, Michigan is the Big Ten. Michigan is a major player in the Big Ten. I shouldn't say they are the Big Ten. They're not the only ones that make decisions, but they oftentimes are ones who lead in kind of making some of the biggest decisions. It's been a charter member school since 1896, shaping its identity through rivalries, expansion, and standards like AAU membership. Sure, they left for a bit years ago, 1907 to 1917, I think it was, but they're still big time decision makers in this conference. They sponsor 36 sports, thrive on conference structure, and have no obvious landing spot unless some kind of super league comes up, and they might be a threat to some of the smaller brands that they want to avoid too. Or the Super League might be a threat that some of the smaller brands want to avoid as well. Even amid all these disagreements, relationships like the one with Ohio State keep things grounded. Yes, they hate each other. They've always been committed rivals within the family, brothers who duke it out at any opportunity. But if we're being honest, Ohio State benefits from having Michigan, and Michigan benefits from having Ohio State. USC, as a newer ad, might have different dynamics. They joined for financial uplift, but turning down more cash now raises eyebrows. If anything, this standoff might fester if unresolved, leading to paranoia among schools like Rutgers or Purdue about being seen as low value. I don't think they're low value, but they could be perceived as that way. But I can't see this turning into Michigan leaving outright unless the Big Ten signs this deal anyway, without consideration of what Michigan and USC want, without their yes votes. Michigan's history suggests they'd fight to reshape the conference from within first. Remember, it was Michigan that, remember when Michigan left the conference from 1907 to 1917, it was because they were removed for being unwilling to follow the rules of the conference set in place. I can't see Michigan or the Big Ten doing that again now. There's too much money on the table, but could that come back on USC? Has USC added enough dollars to the Big Ten deals that's worth keeping them around? I would think so, right? They're huge. People watch them on TV a lot. I would think so. But I haven't been in those negotiations. I haven't been in those meetings, right? And what do we hear about Florida State? Rumors were that Florida State looked like an unattractive member of the ACC with how they fought, or an unattractive member to leave the ACC to go to another conference with how they fought in the ACC. I don't think the same would be said for USC. They are a great university with a lot to offer this conference, both on and off the field. There is far too much at stake and far too much money to be lost to kick anyone out right now, or for Michigan or USC to leave. They are committed to the Big Ten, I Bleav, and they just aren't as committed as everyone that's in. They aren't saying this wrong. They are committed to the Big Ten, I Bleav. They just aren't as committed to everyone that's in the Big Ten. But what we do know is that this marks the beginning of tougher conversations about the future, potentially eyeing a Big Ten without some schools that have been in it for a long, long time. Some might Bleav don't pull their weight, might not be seen as value adders. This conference could turn into more about who's adding value rather than who's adding to, right? That's not just an observation based on pattern. The regions haven't gone there publicly, but we do know that the Big Ten stands at a pivotal moment with alternatives like debt financing or securing TV rights on the table if this falls through. We'll keep watching for updates, maybe coming at you a week or 2 weeks later if things shift. But I want to know, what's your thoughts on Michigan's stance in the division? What's your thoughts on the possibility of them leaving? Are you concerned about USC? Would love to hear your thoughts, your comments. Please do share them here on YouTube. If you're on a podcasting platform that allows you to do that, I'd love to hear that there as well. And subscribe for more as this unfolds, and we'll make sure we keep you up to date with it. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.